I'm Brett Mateo Alderson, the editor-in-chief of FightFanNation.com. Tonight I'm going to talk about the Andre Berto Shane Mosley super fight that's going to happen in Las Vegas, January 30th at the Mandalay Bay on HBO. This fight is very important. It has a lot of ramifications in the sport. First off, now that Manny Pacquiao scheduled to fight Joshua Clottey March 13th in Dallas at Jerry Jones' new Dallas Cowboy Arena, Floyd Mayweather's out of an opponent. Now, Floyd Mayweather might think, oh, I'm a superstar, I'm going to do a million buys every time out no matter what. You know, that's just not the case. You know, when Mike Tyson got out of prison in March of '95 and then fought in August of '05 against Peter McNeely, who was a hobo, you know, that fight did great. I think generated like 1.5 million pay-per-view buys, which was an extraordinary amount of buys for that level of competition. And really, if you look at it, except for the Holyfield fights and the Lex Lewis fight, the major fights that had a lot of historical importance, I mean, that was probably the most successful fight of Mike Tyson's career, and that was because of the curiosity factor. And I think also with Floyd Mayweather, you know, he thinks he's a superstar now. He did over 1 million buys with Juan Manuel Marquez, but I think a lot of that had to do with the curiosity factor. He'd been retired, he hadn't fought since '07, and I think, you know, the sports world was curious to see how Floyd was, and I think that fueled that, you know, that generation of 1 million pay-per-view buys. So, I mean, this fight's really important because today Richard Schaefer came out and told the LA Times that you know, Floyd Mayweather's going to show everyone he's going to step up and he's going to fight Shane Mosley. Shane Mosley's the man to beat at 147 pounds. And you know, I'd like to see the fight, but you know, first Shane Mosley has to get by Andre Berto, and I mean, this is a big fight in itself. This is a very this is a crossroad fight. This is a crossroad fight if there ever was one. First off, Andre Berto's 25-0 in 19 knockouts. He was a two-time national amateur Golden Gloves champion. He was on a 2004 Haitian Olympic team. You know, he's got the pedigree. His father's an MMA fighter and a wrestler. He's undefeated. He's in his mid-20s. I mean, he's a good fighter. He's 25-0. I mean, he's fast. He's athletic. And you know, he's a really solid fighter. And then when you have Shane Mosley, Shane Mosley's, you know, a 3-time world champion. He won the IBF title at 135 pounds. He also won the welterweight title when he beat De La Hoya in 2000, June of 2000 at 147 pounds. And then he won the 154-pound title from De La Hoya in 2003. And, you know, Mosley's never been stopped. He has 5 losses. 2 were to Vernon Forrest. I mean, but Vernon Forrest, you know, rest in peace, Vernon. But Vernon Forrest was 6'+ welterweight. He was a huge welterweight, and he had Shane's number. He beat Shane for a spot on the 1992 Olympic team at 139 pounds, and then beat him twice as a pro. So that was just one of those things. He had Shane's number. And then also he lost twice to Winky Wright. But Winky Wright's huge. I mean, and the second fight was close. I think the judge scorecard read like 115, 113. But Winky Wright, you know, he ended up having a draw with Jermaine Taylor at 160. Fought Bernard Hopkins in the summer of '07, I believe. So, I mean, he was significantly bigger than Mosley. Mosley put up a good fight in all those fights. So, I mean, Shane Mosley, and then his 5th loss was in the fall of '07 to Miguel Cotto, and that was a close fight that could have gone either way. So no one's really ever chased Shane Mosley out of the ring. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer, he's solid, and we saw his last fight, you know, last January, you know, he just completely massacred Antonio Margarito. I mean, you know, no one expected that. I thought maybe he could box Margarito. I actually liked him to outbox Margarito, but I didn't think he was going to dominate him, chase him out of the ring like that. And, you know, Mosley looked like he could, you know, he could fight as good as he's ever been able to fight. I mean, he looked really impressive in that bout against Margarito in January. And but, you know, we don't know. You know, Margarito's been making 147 for a long time. We don't know, maybe with the hand wraps, maybe Margarito was lethal because of the hand wraps. We don't know if that's a realistic barometer to gauge Shane Mosley. And also, you know, there's just so many factors in this fight. First off, Shane Mosley's 38 years old. He hasn't fought in a year. You know, like, again, he did look good in the fight with Antonio Margarito, but I mean, he's 38, and in boxing, you grow old overnight. And then we have Berto, and you know, Berto showed improvement throughout his career. You know, 5, 6, 7 fights ago, he got knocked down by Cosme Rivera, and you know, but he came back and dominated the fight, outboxed him, and then he struggled with David Estrada, who's a tough journeyman at welterweight, French contender at welterweight. And then he came back and showed improvement in those fights. And you know, he dominated Steve Forbes after that. And you know, Steve Forbes was a solid guy. He was one of the runner-ups in the contender, and he'd just come off a loss to Demetrius Hopkins. And most people thought he won that fight, that he was robbed. And Hopkins is one of the top guys at 140. So you know, Andre Berto showed his improvement. Again, he struggled, you know, with Rivera and David Estrada, and then he fights Forbes, and he showed, you know, he showed his boxing ability. He showed the, you know, his level of movement. He showed that he's on a learning curve, that he's still peaking, and that he's getting better and better. And then earlier this year, you know, he had a war with Luis Colasso, who was really a solid really a tough 147-pound fighter, former champion, young veteran, great chin, and that was a war. That was a super fight. I mean, Colossal throws a lot of punches. But then after that, Berto fought in June. He fought against Juan Durango, who's power puncher and one of the better guys at 140 pounds, and he completely dominated the fight. He pitched a shutout, completely outboxed him. He showed that he's improving every fight and that he's still learning. And so we don't know where his peak's yet. Where his peak is yet. He might still be getting better, and he might peak at this fight. So those are some questions there. The questions are: is Andre Berto improving? Okay, are we going to see a better Andre Berto in this fight? Second off, is the 1 year layoff going to affect Shane Mosley? Is he really as good as he looked against Antonio Margarito? He's been off a year. How's a year layoff going to affect a 38-year-old? And him and his wife, Jim Mosley, broke up, and some people think that that had a positive effect on and was one of the catalysts for his performances against Antonio Margarito. Because he wasn't stressed out and she was kind of controlling. But you never know. I was at Heat, which is like one of the top clubs in Orange County, and he was there in October or November. So I mean, if Shane Mosley's out chasing women, partying, living the single life, that could also negatively impact him right now, since he's a 38-year-old coming off a year layoff. So we don't know. I mean, this fight is just so many questions. It's such an intriguing matchup, and just how the fight came about. I mean, Ross Greenberg at HBO called up Berto to the offices to ask him to take this fight. And it was, the story behind it, one of Rick Reno's, who's the owner of BoxingScene.com, one of his writers is on Twitter, on Andre Berto's Twitter account. And he told Rick Reno, and Rick Reno's from New York, he's a New York guy just like Lou DiBella, and he told Lou DiBella, and Lou DiBella was like, what? Berto went to talk to HBO about a fight with Shane Mosley? I'm his promoter. But the thing is, what? Berto's with Al Heyman. Al Heyman's his advisor, or whatever he calls himself, manager. And Al Heyman's powerful. I always call him, he's like the guy in Inspector Gadget, if you've ever seen the 80s cartoon, the guy that sits behind the desk and you never get to see his face. I mean, he's so powerful. I mean, I've heard people say he made $200 million in '08. I mean, he kind of, he's one of the advisors and runs the promotions for Beyonce Knowles concerts, and he really has a lot of say and a lot of pull in the boxing industry, and he's with. So that was kind of a shady thing to happen to have for Ross Greenberg, but he probably wants to put on better fights. Greenberg's been under attack. Specifically, Thomas Hauser's really criticized him in a lot of columns the last couple years, and then also Showtime's hot on HBO's trail. They had that Super 6 tournament that pitched the best fighters in the world against one another, and HBO, they recently paid over $3 million for the rights to televise Antonio Tarver, Chad Dawson, and the first fight wasn't even good. It wasn't even an exciting matchup in live or on paper. So I mean, I feel like Ross Greenberg, kind of reached out to Andre Berto because he needs to have big fights and to keep the network, to keep HBO the network of champions, and that's why he did that. So I mean, this fight is so intriguing, guys. It's really gonna to see what happens, and Mayweather. I think Mayweather's gonna fight the winner of this fight. I think Pacquiao will probably get by Clottey, maybe not, and by then Mayweather will have a fight with and Mosley. And Golden Boy pretty much is with Mayweather and Shane Mosley, so they shouldn't have a problem making that fight. So like I said, on January 30th, I'm going to go with Shane Mosley. I just think he looked good enough in his last fight. He's a Hall of Famer. I just think right now at this point he has too much for Berto, but I want to bet your money on it. I think Berto can maybe improve, and he showed the learning curve. He showed his improvement already numerous times in his career, so he might come up and step up and win this title. Plus, one of Berto's assets is his speed, and Mosley's 38 years old, so maybe he can use and take advantage of that and outspeed and outbox Shane Mosley. But right now Mosley looked too good. Also, I want to see Mosley, I want to see Mosley Pacquiao as much as I want to see, Mosley Mayweather's want to see Mayweather Pacquiao, really. And those guys were meant to fight a long time ago. So this fight set that up, and it's going to be a good fight. And again, Berto might be able to upset this, and he'll be thrown into the mix between the Pacquiao Mayweather mix. Anyways, have a good night. Thank you for watching. Have a good night.